Have you ever felt it? A silent, invisible current pulling you forward. A relentless hum of urgency that whispers you're not doing enough, not moving fast enough, not being enough. It's a race you never consciously entered, a marathon with no finish line in sight. Yet here you are, running alongside everyone else. This isn't just a feeling, it's a frequency, a collective hypnosis that has convinced us our worth is measured in motion. If this message already resonates with the deepest parts of your soul, acknowledge it. Like this video, subscribe to this channel for more truths, and let us know in the comments with a simple, quote, "I'm waking up," because your awakening is a beacon for others who feel lost in this very same race. You are not alone in this feeling. It is the great, unspoken trial of our time, a spiritual test, designed to see if you will remember who you are before you forget completely. This invisible race is more than just societal pressure. It has become the dominant, godless religion of the modern world. It doesn't start with a gunshot, but with the quiet hum of expectation, a grade on a report card, a promotion at work, the endless scroll of curated success on a screen. Slowly, subtly, your divine life is converted into a spreadsheet of targets and deadlines. Success is no longer a feeling of inner peace, but a checklist of external achievements. Productivity, once a simple tool, has been twisted into a moral imperative. To be busy is to be good, to be still is to be sinful. This is the great deception, a low-vibration matrix that feeds on our energy. The German thinker Max Weber saw the seeds of this long ago. He recognized how work, once a necessity for survival, was being spiritually reprogrammed into a virtue in itself. The Protestant work ethic, he observed, laid the foundation for a world where labor became a form of worship. In this new church, rest is met with a silent, gnawing guilt, and perpetual motion becomes the ultimate badge of honor, the proof of your worthiness. The idea that being busy equals being good began to seep into the very consciousness of our civilization, shaping everything from how we raise our children to how we define our own identities. We stopped asking why we were running. The only truth that seemed to matter was that stopping was not an option. And so, we internalized the race. We accepted it not as a choice, but as the natural order of things, as unbreakable as the law of gravity. Day after day, we equate our sense of self with the sheer volume of our output. We measure our existence by how much we do, how fast we move, how much we achieve. But have you ever paused, even for a fleeting moment, to ask, where are we all really going? The ultimate tragedy of this invisible race is not just that it leaves us spiritually and physically exhausted. The deeper tragedy is that it masterfully disguises itself as purpose. This structure is so deeply normalized, so intricately woven into the fabric of our societies, that to even question it feels like an act of heresy, almost immoral. If you dare to say you don't want to hustle, the world looks at you with confusion and suspicion. What's wrong with you? They ask, their eyes reflecting the very programming you are trying to escape. If you choose rest over relentless activity, you are judged as lazy, as lacking ambition. This invisible pressure doesn't need to shout. Its power lies in its subtlety. It whispers. It creeps into the way we plan our lives, the way we speak about success, even the way we love. The more productive a person appears, the more they are admired. The more overloaded their schedule, the more they are respected, as if exhaustion itself were a currency of value. Weber understood that this was not merely an economic phenomenon. It was the birth of a new kind of modern spirituality, a religion without gods, where the altar is the office desk, where work replaces worship, and where output becomes the only path to salvation. In this paradigm, it is no longer enough to simply live. You must constantly justify your very existence by doing. Being is not the goal. Producing is. This cold, mechanical logic bleeds into every corner of our lives. People apologize for taking breaks. Vacations come tinged with the guilt of falling behind. Even our precious free time must be used well, optimized for self-improvement. You can't just sit and think. You must be reading something productive, learning a new skill, optimizing your body, or monetizing your hobby. Life itself morphs into a constant, unending performance review, and you are cast in the dual role of both the exhausted employee and the relentless supervisor. We begin to evaluate ourselves, not by the quality of who we are, but by what we've accomplished lately. A quiet day, a day of simple being, becomes an existential crisis. And this crisis isn't just about work, it's a crisis of identity. We wear our busyness like a medal of honor. We find a strange pride in bragging about how much we're juggling, how little we sleep, how many emails are flooding our inbox. But behind this frantic performance, there is a silent, deep-seated fear. It's the fear that if I'm not producing, I'm disappearing. And in that fear, the race continues quiet, invisible, and absolutely relentless. What makes this race so uniquely dangerous is that it is designed to feel intensely personal. You are conditioned to believe it's your fault that you're tired. You are told that you just need better habits, more discipline, a stronger mindset. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the system itself is fundamentally broken? What if the very definition of success we are all chasing was intentionally crafted to keep us running not towards genuine fulfillment, but away from ourselves? The invisible race is masterful because it convinces you that there is no alternative. It preaches the gospel that life must be hard, busy, and perpetually optimized. But behind this exhausting narrative lies a deeper, more sacred truth. The moment you begin to question the race, the very moment you pause to look at the track, it begins to lose its power over you. It is not weakness to step off the treadmill, it is profound wisdom. The question we must dare to ask ourselves is not how to run faster, but whether we were ever meant to run this particular race at all. There is a cruel irony woven into the fabric of our modern lives. We are more technologically advanced and materially productive than any generation in history, yet so many of us feel more stagnant and spiritually empty than ever. We answer hundreds of emails, attend endless meetings, and juggle countless tasks, only to lie awake at night feeling strangely, deeply unaccomplished. The anthropologist David Graeber illuminated this paradox with piercing clarity in his work on bullshit jobs. He exposed a hidden truth of modern capitalism. An alarming number of the jobs that exist today serve no real, tangible purpose. They exist not because they add genuine value to society, but because the system demands that people stay busy at all costs. Graeber wasn't attacking the workers, he was defending them. He saw how intelligent, capable, creative souls were being trapped in positions that drained their spirit while contributing nothing meaningful to the world. And the most insidious part? These jobs are often wrapped in complex corporate jargon that makes them sound important. But when you strip away the buzzwords and the acronyms, what's left is often a profound emptiness, a daily performance of productivity without any real substance. In this strange new landscape, busyness becomes a form of theater. People spend their entire lives inside organizations where metrics are worshipped, but meaning is lost. They attend strategy meetings about strategies, revise documents that no one will ever read, and spend countless hours maintaining systems that exist only to justify their own existence. The illusion of progress is maintained by constant motion, but it's a motion without direction. It feels like running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up, not to take you anywhere beautiful, but simply to ensure you never, ever stop. This isn't just inefficient, it's spiritually depleting, because deep down, a part of every person knows. They know their divine energy is being spent, but their soul is not being fed. There is a quiet desperation behind the professional smiles and the polite office banter. It is the unspoken question that haunts the corporate corridors and the late-night work sessions. Is this all there is? And when that question is ignored for too long, it calcifies into a kind of inner silence, a numbness disguised as professionalism. The tragedy deepens when our very identity becomes fused to this hollow machinery. When someone asks, "So, what do you do?" we rarely answer with what we love or who we truly are. We answer with our job title, as if that single sterile line could possibly capture the vast, beautiful complexity of our essence. And when that title is tied to a role that feels meaningless, we begin to internalize that meaninglessness. We start to believe that we are what the system reflects back to us. If our work is empty, then we must be empty too. That's how the illusion becomes our internalized reality. You're not just doing a job you don't believe in. You begin to doubt your own intrinsic value. And the more exhausted you feel, the more you blame yourself. You think you need more motivation, more grit, more hustle. But maybe what you really need is less noise, less illusion, less pretending. We are conditioned to think that the answer is always more. But what if the true answer is something entirely different? What if the real courage lies not in running faster, but in asking whether this system deserves our sacred energy in the first place? Graeber's insight was radical, not because it was complicated, but because it was devastatingly obvious in the way a profound truth becomes once someone is brave enough to speak it aloud. Our world is filled with people working jobs they secretly know shouldn't exist. Entire careers are built around maintaining appearances, avoiding scrutiny, and ticking boxes that lead nowhere. But the system keeps going because questioning it feels dangerous. If you admit your job is pointless, it's seen as a personal failure, not a systemic flaw. So, people stay quiet. They keep playing the game, fearing what might happen if they stop. But what if that fear is the very tool the system uses to perpetuate itself? The illusion of progress is powerful because it keeps us compliant. It convinces us that fatigue equals worth and that discomfort is just the price of being a responsible adult. But perhaps real adulthood isn't about surrendering to a broken structure. Maybe it's about reclaiming the divine right to ask, does any of this make sense? And if not, what are we willing to do about it? The philosopher Erich Fromm, in his groundbreaking work, To Have or To Be, warned us about this very dangerous shift. He argued that modern society had moved away from valuing authentic existence, the raw, unfiltered experience of simply being alive, and toward a mindset where identity is built on ownership and possession, on having. The consequence of this shift is devastating. When your sense of self is tied to what you possess, your job title, your possessions, your social status, you become fragile. Your worth becomes dependent on external validation, on what others can see, measure, and approve of. Suddenly, the soul is no longer something to be cultivated, but something to be decorated for public display. We become products of ourselves, polished, performative, and painfully disconnected from our own inner truth. The logic of the system is seductive. It tells us that if we work hard enough, earn enough, and achieve enough, we will finally become someone. But the reality is far more cruel. The more we chase these external markers of value, the more we lose touch with who we were before we started running. Individuality becomes a performance. Social media intensifies this illusion exponentially. Every post, every story, becomes a curated proof of worth. We learn to pose instead of feel, to display instead of reflect. Fromm saw this as a profound spiritual alienation. We become strangers to our own inner lives. Our true fears, desires, and dreams are edited out to make room for a polished, productive persona. We are taught to market ourselves, as if being human were a brand strategy. And beneath all the branding, something quiet and vital starts to fade. Authenticity, presence, and the deep, simple joy of being rather than performing. The danger is that this culture of having doesn't just change how we see ourselves, it fundamentally changes how we see others. People become competitors, obstacles, or tools. Relationships become transactional. Intimacy becomes conditional on appearances. In a world where worth is tied to image, vulnerability becomes a liability. We hide our struggles, disguise our doubts, and smile through the exhaustion. But the more we conform to the expectations of this system, the more invisible we become to ourselves. Fromm believed that true freedom begins only when we stop chasing what we don't truly need and start asking who we really are without the mask. But that kind of deep self-inquiry is difficult in a world where stillness feels like failure and introspection feels like indulgence. We are programmed to move, to consume, to strive. Yet what if the deepest act of rebellion is to stop and simply be? In a system designed to reward conformity, embracing your unique, unpolished individuality becomes a powerful act of resistance. Choosing authenticity over image is not just a personal decision, it's a radical one. Fromm didn't offer easy solutions, but he did offer a vision, a society where people are valued not for what they have, but for who they are. A society where relationships are based on depth, not display, and where work serves life, not the other way around. But to get there, we must first recognize how deeply we've internalized the opposite. The fear of not being enough is the engine that keeps the rat race alive. But that fear isn't natural, it is manufactured. And when we begin to see that, we begin to reclaim our divine power. The monumental shift from a having modality to a being modality is not a small one. It is the foundation of an entirely new way of living, one that doesn't depend on the applause of others, but on the quiet, unwavering truth of who we are beneath all the noise. The philosopher Alain de Botton explored this very human predicament in his reflections on status anxiety. He unmasked a truth that most of us live but rarely name, that much of what we do, what we strive for, and what we fear is not about simple survival, but about recognition. We want to be valued, not just in private, but publicly. We want tangible proof that our lives mean something. And in today's world, that proof often comes through the painful lens of comparison. It's not about who you are in your essence, but who you are in relation to someone else. And so, even without realizing it, we begin to measure our worth through the curated lives of others, their promotions, their vacations, their picture-perfect moments online. These images become silent accusations whispering, "Why not you? Why not yet?" Social media has, of course, made this infinitely worse. Not because it invented comparison, but because it industrialized it. Every scroll is a mirror held up to our deepest insecurities. We see the filtered, highlight reel versions of others and compare them to our own raw, unedited reality. But the worst part isn't that we feel envious. It's that we begin to believe we are truly falling behind. Behind in success, behind in beauty, behind in life itself. And in a culture where visibility equals value, being unnoticed feels like complete erasure. De Botton understood that our anxiety about status is not about money alone. It's about love and meaning. It's about wanting to be important in the eyes of others. And so we chase markers of success, not because we deeply desire the things themselves, but because we fear being forgotten. We fear being average. We fear being no one. And so the rat race continues, driven not by authentic desire, but by a deep and profound dread. The tragedy is that the more we chase status, the more hollow it becomes. The high of being seen is always fleeting. There is always someone with more followers, more beauty, more success. The mountain has no peak, only endless new levels of perceived inadequacy. And yet, we keep climbing, thinking the next milestone will finally make us feel whole. But it doesn't, it can't, because the root of the pain isn't a lack of achievement. It's the ingrained belief that we are only as worthy as our position in the social hierarchy. De Botton invites us to question this cruel logic. Why do we let others decide our value? Why do we outsource our self-worth to strangers? What would happen if we chose to define success on our own terms, not in public applause, but in private peace? That shift may not be loud or flashy, but it might be the most liberating act of all. To escape the tyranny of comparison, we have to confront something even deeper, the fear of being invisible. Not invisible in a literal sense, but emotionally invisible, unseen, unloved, irrelevant. This is the fear that fuels the race for attention, for status, for validation. And yet, in chasing visibility, we often lose ourselves. We become projections, personas, avatars. The irony is brutal. In trying so hard to be seen, we become less real. De Botton doesn't suggest we abandon ambition or recognition entirely, but he does urge us to become more conscious of why we want what we want. Not all desires are our own. Some are implanted by a culture that confuses noise with meaning. Maybe the answer is not to shine brighter, but to step into the shadows willingly, to embrace invisibility not as failure, but as freedom. In a world obsessed with being seen, perhaps the most radical act is to become deeply, unapologetically yourself, even if no one is watching. Escaping the rat race doesn't mean abandoning responsibility, rejecting ambition, or disappearing into the forest. It means something far more subtle and courageous. It means choosing to live consciously within a system designed to make you live unconsciously. Fromm, Graeber, de Botton, and Weber, they each, in their own way, warned us that modern life was becoming a machine. A fast, noisy, demanding machine that punishes rest, rewards busyness, and measures success in units of exhaustion. But what if we no longer accept those terms? What if we decide that success is not a finish line, but a feeling? That purpose is not something you chase, but something you create with intention, presence, and care. Leaving the race is not about quitting life. It is about reclaiming it. It's about walking when everyone else is running. It's about choosing meaning over momentum. To begin this sacred shift, we have to confront the voice inside us that whispers, "You're not doing enough." That voice is not ours. It's the echo of a system that feeds on our insecurities. It tells us that rest is laziness, that slowness is weakness, that stillness is failure. But that voice can be unlearned. We can reprogram our minds to recognize a different kind of value, a value that isn't loud, public, or applauded. Time becomes sacred again, not as a resource to be spent efficiently, but as a space to be filled with care. When you step out of the race, you start to ask different questions. Not, how much can I get, but what do I really need? Not, how can I impress, but what truly matters to me? This is not a retreat from life. It is a return to it. A return to depth, to presence, to being. That said, opting out of the race is not easy. The system is persistent. It will guilt you for not optimizing every hour. It will tempt you with metrics, compare you to others, and feed you the illusion that more is always better. But every act of resistance begins small. Maybe it's choosing to rest without guilt. Maybe it's saying no to a promotion that doesn't align with your deepest values. Maybe it's walking away from a job that pays well but starves your spirit. These decisions won't earn you applause. In fact, they may confuse or disappoint others. But the real reward is invisible. It's the quiet return of your own voice. It's the sense of wholeness that begins to bloom when you no longer measure your worth by speed, output, or applause. As Graeber reminds us, meaning isn't found in appearances. It's found in the honesty of what we do and why we do it. And so, we close with a quiet provocation. What if the true victory isn't winning the race, but refusing to run it at all? Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Not because you gave up, but because you woke up. Because you realized that the finish line was a mirage, and the real treasure, the time, the freedom, and the self were waiting just outside the track all along.